Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos Podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything related to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's society. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone, ZP002. Back with me on the show today are two amazing men, people that I call a friend. They're not only ZERT members, they're ZERT instructors, and they are my co-hosts for the day. So welcome back to the show, Jamie and Paul.
Good to be here as always.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's been a minute since you guys have been on together.
Yeah, I think we've talked about getting all three of us on here at once, and I think this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken. This is it's our first three-way or threesome or whatever you want to call it. Or definitely
not our first threesome, Paul. We've had another one.
This
is the second. Yeah, this is the second time we've had everybody on, right?
This is at least the second time.
Yeah.
But usually you pay double for this kind of action. So.
Exactly. With you two guys, my gosh. Thank God there's a time zone difference because I couldn't be able to handle it. Anyway. So I don't know about, well, I know about that we're not experiencing out there where you are, Jamie, but today, the date of today's recording is December 5th, and woke up to a first snowfall here. Did you get snow down there in PA, Paul?
We did. I mean, it wasn't, I woke up to it's like the wind is blowing like 50 miles an hour. Certain units would probably still jump in this, this is the days that I don't, I have, bad memories of jumping with high winds where we weren't supposed to, but certain people didn't do their jobs. But yeah, it did snow last night. There's a little bit of snow, but I think all the wind blew it to the east. So
hey, let me ask you a question.
White on the ground.
When you jumped, did you have a rucksack full of 50 grenades? We're just gonna go right.
You know
there.
what? The book's not out yet.
The book is not out. Okay, all right.
It's in the book.
It's in the book. It's in the book. There are a lot of books out there. Yeah. So snow here, winter. They're talking about winds all day today. I'm sure it is the absolute most perfect weather out there in San Diego. Where
it's 70 degrees. It was like 40 degrees last night, but 70 degrees today. So
My God, it's slightly annoying, but also
I pay for it.
You do pay for it. Yes, you do. San Diego is not fun. But anyway, so here we are. We are at the beginning of December, folks. So thank you all for another amazing year doing these podcasts. As I went and I put up the show for this week, now when you go on to Spotify for podcasts, so if everyone's not aware, I'm sure you have, we throw it out there every week, but obviously we publish our show on Thursdays every single week on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, and that's the audio version, and then we put the video version out on YouTube. If you have not gone over to the YouTube channel, please do that. Subscribe, like the videos, hit the bell so you get notified when we launch videos like this and like other product review videos that we have out there. But when I went and put the podcast up on Spotify, they give you your 2024 Wrapped, and there's a bunch of people on social media showing you their Wrapped, because a lot of people listen to podcasts, but it's a little bit different as a creator, because it shows you where our listeners are. We're in 6 countries. We have gained new listeners this year, and they show, the average time people listen and what our most popular episode was that was downloaded. And I'll ask both of you, what do you think our most popular episode was this year?
If I had to guess and I haven't looked at any analytics or anything like that, if I had to guess, I would guess the Leave the World Behind movie podcast, but
that would be the wrong guess.
No.
Paul?
Man, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's the one you just posted about Spectre, but that's probably not true because you just posted that sucker.
Also wrong. You can all get one more guess while I find the actual number and what the actual title is. Try again. Try harder.
Well, people like I don't ever listen back to the podcast that you and I do. I only listen to the ones that you and Paul do. But I'm just going to people like drama. So maybe the one where you talked about your gun malfunctioning. I don't know, because that's slightly dramatic.
No, it was actually one that you and I did. So there is that. and it was the why choosing a rifle over a pistol.
Ah,
You didn't let me guess right there, and that's the one I was going to guess.
So, of course, I knew. I knew you were going to, buddy. And I just kind of wanted to beat you to it. But it was interesting. But anyway, there was a comment recently, which was a first comment we received on Spotify in a minute, and that was on the Spectre AAR. And it was actually Tommy Martin apologizing to you for shooting you with his brass.
You might want to clarify, because that sounded pretty bad.
that is bad. But yeah, did you hear about that, Jamie, where the dude was shooting a
yeah,
PCC?
I did. I heard somebody had a PCC that was ejecting brass like 25 yards like a laser.
Yeah, Paul took one right to the noggin. But yeah, it's wild. So obviously, I love to see that stuff. I don't get as great analytics on Apple Podcasts, and I believe that's where the majority of our listeners are, because a majority of them do use Apple over Spotify, according to the statistics. But it's always wild to see. Today's show went out, it was episode 92, so we were closing in on 100 episodes, and it's just, I think that's pretty wild. So again, to all of you listeners out there, thank you to you and to Jamie and Paul and any of the other guests we've had on here. I want to say a big thank you to you guys as well. We've got some special guests coming up. I think we've got the folks over at DMO Knives coming on the show, and we've got Sully from Black Ops Toys coming on the show to discuss something new and in the works. But anyway, today's show, a little bit different, a little bit of a hot topic in the news. And you're going to get some insight. I like it because you're going to get some insight from a dude that's still in, a dude that's out, and a dude that's never been in. So you're going to get a little bit of a civilian take, an SF guy and a guy that's still in, active, and we're going to talk a little bit today about stolen valor. And unfortunately, it always seems to rear its ugly head. I think it's just something that we're always going to have to deal with. But you don't always hear about the dude who rolls through the local Walmart in, a camo outfit with every ribbon under the sun, who gets called out by the local legit dude. If you're lucky enough, you may make that show with, what's his name, Don Shipley.
Yeah.
He's out there calling people out. But if you have a big enough platform and you have a big enough spotlight on you, and something like this comes out, well, it's going to be everywhere. And unless you're living under a rock and you don't watch social media, you've seen some of that recently. And we're going to talk about it today.
Yeah, it's stolen valor for me. Chris just referenced one of us is an SF dude, one of us is a dude that's still in. I'm just a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. Yes. So I've been in the Navy for 27 years. I'm not an SF guy in any way, shape, or form. I've had a very interesting career, I think, but I also don't think I've had a career that's worth writing a book over. But I have always I've done a few cool things. The way I've always paraphrased it is, I think if I showed 12-year-old Jamie like pictures and videos of the things that grown-up Jamie has done, I think he would be pretty pleased with that. And 12-year-old Jamie would probably think I was pretty cool. But I have always gone way out of my way to make it very clear about what I am not. There was a period of time where I worked at a SEAL team, and sometimes I will reference things that I did, but I always preface that with a statement to make it very clear that I was not, am not, never have been, never will be a SEAL. In my Instagram profile, for me, because I'm a person that has a little bit of integrity, a person that I used to work with like kind of that I respected a lot. Like he and I didn't really get along, but I actually respected him because of the things he had done, the deployments he had done. He came at me one time and accused me that he said I was trying to create like this online persona to make people think I'm some sort of operator. And like, it takes a lot to hurt my feelings, but like that hurt my feelings a little bit because I have always tried to go way out of my way to make sure nobody can ever say that I said I was this or I said I was that or that I'm anything I'm not. And if you look at my Instagram profile, one of the things it says on my Instagram profile is not an operator.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to something that you've said multiple times, and just to clarify for people who may want to know a little bit more. When you say you worked with the SEAL teams, what does that mean? Like you were attached to them, you guys built bunk beds together. When you say work with it, and again, for the listeners out there who may not understand what that means.
Oh, we showered together.
Okay, so that's working. That you guys.
No, yeah. So I was attached to SEAL Team 3 for a couple of years, and then I from there I actually did go through SEAL training, and did not make it. I went through SEAL training twice, did not make it. But yeah, for about a period of 2 years, I was attached as a direct support guy to SEAL Team 3, and then also in my Navy career, I've been a rescue swimmer. So after not making it through BUDS, they didn't. They typically don't want to send you back to a support role at a SEAL team after that.
Got it.
And so then I went back out to serve for a couple more years as a rescue swimmer, and then I went and became and served as a water survival instructor. And then after that tour, then I went to EOD Mobile Unit 3, and then I was with EOD Mobile Unit 3 for 5.5 years, and that's when I did my 3 tours in Afghanistan as part of a special combined joint counter IED task force in southern Afghanistan. So that was my little bit of time served in a ground combat zone doing counter IED stuff. So I've had a very unusual career path, especially for a regular Navy guy. Paul has all the legit tabs on his shoulder, and like when I was in Afghanistan, I had a tab that I wore that said regular guy, because that's like for all the cool stuff I've done, I'm at the end of the day, I'm still a regular guy. I'm not SF in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Definitely not an operator, and I like to make that clear.
Yeah. So. But what you are is obviously you a life. I mean, you're going to be in for a life full service, right? Full career, 20.
As it looks right now, and I have just started submitting my retirement paperwork. It's not approved yet, so there's still time to get out or get back in, whatever. But right now I'm set to retire at 29 years of service. So,
so lifer. And Paul, same thing for you, right? You were in for the full Monty, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't have to do 29 to be a lifer. At 20, you can retire and you're good to go. But yeah, kudos for all those guys that did 29, 22, 23, all that stuff. And I was lucky enough to do 21. But at that point, my body started breaking enough that I was like, you know what, I kind of got to save a little bit try to somewhat enjoy retirement, and how that goes and all that. But yeah, a little bit different career that I did, but it brought us all together. So one team, one fight is what we all say.
That's true.
I got to say, man, it always cracked. Jamie's not the only guy that wore a regular guy tab. We saw it all the time, and it just
that's funny.
It's one of those things we just everybody needs a tab, even if it says regular guy.
That is funny. I thought that was a joke, so that was a real thing.
No, that's a real thing. They're out there.
That is funny. And obviously, Paul, your 20 years look a little bit different, and obviously my last 20 years look a whole lot different as someone who has not served. During your time, and I'm trying to go back to when I first started to witness the stolen valor thing and see its equivalence or see its effect within this community, and the community, and it's not only the community, and it's your community, it's your community of veterans and people that are still serving. But I guess where I see it would be my industry, or in the industry that we're all still in here, and that's the firearms industry. And where it kind of pertains to the firearm industry and what we've seen, or what I know what I've seen, and I know Paul saw it, and I think Jamie as well, is we've seen a recurring situation pop up where dude X says he did all of these cool things, and then all of these companies kind of hook their carts on to his horse based on the things that dude X said that they did. And Joe Civilian is like, oh, cool. Well, I want to go learn from that guy or buy that guy's product that he's endorsing. And dude X starts making money off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
okay,
go ahead,
sorry.
Jamie.
I was just going to say, like, I think we should kind of set the table, because we've already thrown the term stolen valor around quite a bit. So, like, to me, there have always been 4 versions of stolen valor.
Okay.
Version 1 is person who never served in the military at all, ever, and claims to have. And then usually those people, they have to take it 10 steps further than that, than just getting a free meal at Applebee's. Because, like, those guys are the ones that, like you said, you see them at Walmart wearing, a rack of ribbons that looks like, General Patton.
Right.
But to me, the people who never served at all are like the easiest ones for me to suss out. There's all these videos on YouTube of, like, veterans confronting people that they know are fake. And it's like, I don't know what you're hoping for, but these people are rarely or never going to, like, break down and go, oh, bro, you got me. Like, they're just going to keep piling on lie after lie after lie. But you could be a person who has seen every military movie that there has ever been made. You can read every military book that there has ever been written. And there's just certain things that we do and we say, and there's things that we don't do and that we don't say that have never made it into any books or into any movies. There's these little nuanced things that I can tell that guy over there's a veteran, and I can tell that guy over there wearing 4 medals of honor is not.
Right.
And so that's the first version, guy who never served at all. And to me, those are typically the easiest ones to suss out. And then there's the person who actually did serve in the military, but then comes out with false claims. And I don't know if we want to name names or whatever, but this isn't a secret. But there was a guy that was on a show on Discovery Channel, I think, and it was a survival show. And he claimed that he had been a ranger and a ranger instructor and this and that. And the guy, from his portrayal on the show, did seem to be a survival expert. But then when people dove into his military career, they found out he had been like a cook in the Army for 3 years or something like that. And I think, in that guy's situation, he did have a wealth of survival knowledge that was sufficient enough to make an entertaining TV show. But maybe he thought if he went in there and said, oh, I was just a cook in the Army for 3 years,
Right.
They would have never put him on the TV show. And maybe that's true, but that's an example of somebody who actually did serve, but then made all these false claims about things that they didn't actually do and qualifications that they didn't actually have, and communities that they never actually served in. And then the last two start to get a little murky in the stolen valor arena. Is
before you go down those two, finish those. Paul, do you agree with those first two?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's necessarily, I don't want to say stolen valor isn't a big deal, because it is absolutely a big deal. But I do agree with Jamie. There's different levels. But I also think no matter what the level is, it has to do with misrepresentation.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's misrepresentation about valor, about the things that you've done, about being in the military, about the schools you've been to, what you achieved in those schools, what you've done in combat, and if you go out there and, you earn money on this stuff, if you're teaching under a false pretense, or if you're writing books and, just, making millions of dollars going out and doing seminars and all this stuff, you're not just misrepresenting yourself, but has a lot to do with the unit that you're in and the buddies you served with. I think
Right.
that's a lot of the problems that's going on now. I see so much stuff online where people go, hey, these certain people are doing great things. Why does it matter? Well, it matters to the people that they're lying about, and it matters to the people that have died doing these heroic acts that these guys are portraying. And I think that's the biggest thing as a, and you see it. And I think we're going to try our darndest not to mention names in here, and that's going to be pretty hard to do. But it seems like lately, it's just all this stuff starts coming out, and you see stuff online. It's like, does it really matter? Well, yeah, I think it does matter.
Yeah, because, I agree. I agree, and I think I want to touch on what you just said about the lately we've seen a lot of this, but let's go back to the last two, because like you just said, they get a little bit dicey.
Yeah, so the last one I talked about is a person who actually did serve in the military, but claims they did a whole bunch of stuff that they did not do. And then the last two, where they start to get a little bit murky, is you have guys that did serve. They did serve with distinction in special units or special forces or whatever, and then they embellish, like a certain person who claims that he was the first guy through the door that shot another, that was the first one to shoot another well-known person. And, and like Paul was kind of alluding to, does it matter if he was the first person through the door or the second or third person through the door? He was there. He did place his finger on the trigger and apply pressure and shoot this well-known person. So does it matter that he was the first or second? And I would agree that, I mean, kind of, yeah, it does, because it does speak to your credibility, and it does speak to what was the word you used, Paul? Misrepresentation. Sorry. So there are people that served with distinction that then go back and kind of, they did great things, but then they feel a pressure to go back and beef that up and make their already pretty badass career try to sound more badass. And then the last one is something that you and I've talked about before, Chris, because I have not a friend, but I have an acquaintance that I served with before that falls into this category. And I think actually probably we all know a couple of people that fall into this category. Is there's the very nuanced stolen valor guy. So when I was at the SEAL team, and I was never a SEAL, when I was at the SEAL team, I got to do a lot of cool stuff. I got to work with the guys. I got to go through a lot of cool training. I got to participate in like really high speed, high level training exercises, and I got to do a lot of cool stuff. There was this other guy that I worked with at the SEAL team that was also a support guy. And when he got out, just completely by chance, he moved to Texas, and then he became friends with one of my mutual friends just completely by accident. And my friend reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I met this guy that knows you. He was a SEAL at SEAL Team 3 when you were there, and blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "What's his name?" And he told me. I'm like, "That guy's not a SEAL." And my friend's like, "Oh, are you sure?" I'm like, "Ooh. Yeah, I'm positive." Right. And it turns out what this nuanced version of stolen valor is, this guy will purposely, very specifically say these very specific things in a very specific slanted way, where he's not actually saying I'm a SEAL or I was a SEAL, but he's saying things specifically in a certain way to make you come to that conclusion.
Right.
And he's okay with you coming to that conclusion. And then if anybody ever confronts him about it, he can go, "Well, I never said that. I never said I was a SEAL," which is true. But you purposely said things to lead people to believe that without actually having to say it. And so that, to me, those are the four versions of stolen valor. And where it gets even more tricky or crappy or whatever is that the only prosecutable version of stolen valor, as the actual Stolen Valor Act, the way the actual law is written, is the only way to actually prosecute somebody. And I don't even really know how you would go about prosecuting somebody, but the only prosecutable version of stolen valor, the way the law is written, is to specifically claim that you have a medal that you don't have. So all the four versions I listed are really not even legally prosecutable unless you are claiming to have a specific medal that you don't have.
Yeah. Now, Paul, obviously, I'm pretty sure that you agree with that third one, because you and I both have an acquaintance at that has experienced that. And I mean, how do you feel about that last one? Have you experienced anything like that, where you got a dude out there who dresses the part? Now, obviously, Jamie, that last one was somebody that served. And I guess that's the only way that it really works. They served.
He did serve. He was a support guy at SEAL Team 3 with me when I was there. Absolutely was not a SEAL, but when you're around that community, you do get to see things and hear things, and so you can kind of speak the lingo a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. He purposely says things to make people believe he was a SEAL without ever those words never actually come out of his mouth, as far as I know.
Got it. Paul, you ever experienced something like that?
Oh, heck yeah. We experience it all the time. I got a funny story about that. We were in Iraq. It was my second trip second trip to Iraq. And one of our support guys, a real good dude, squared away, good support guy. Somebody got on his Facebook and found a picture of him, and he was telling women that he was a Green Beret. He had a picture of him wearing a Green Beret, and we go out on a mission, and we get back, and his picture with this beret on, just doing the part, was on every computer in our talk. That was like the screensaver on the computer. So we all went in there and looked at the picture. We looked at him. I mean, what do you say at that point?
Right. Right.
But I mean, we were active duty, and this guy was going around. And the thing is like Jamie said, if you're a support guy, you can pretty much, man, you can talk the talk. You know the lingo. You know how they, how they operate. You know everything about them. So, most of the time with, and he's not going out, he's probably doing his buffet, but most of these guys, he's going home on leave, with all of his fancy stuff. Yep. It's really easy now with Velcro patches. You can just go to the PX and buy a bunch of Velcro patches, go home and throw that stuff on and buy a beret, and there's no checks and balances. But I don't want to say it's a lot easier now than it was then, but yeah, you see that stuff all the time. And
I have to say,
on the news or social media,
when I first joined the military, when I was brand new in the military, I was surprised that like I could go into the Navy Exchange and just buy a SEAL Trident. Like in my mind as a new military guy, I assumed that like if I go into the Exchange to buy a SEAL Trident and a Medal of Honor, you can't buy a Medal of Honor. That's not true. Let's see. I think you can either Bronze Stars or Silver Stars. Like I can just walk into the Exchange and just buy that. And like
that is interesting.
Nobody asks to see documentation or so. As a new guy, I was kind of surprised by that. I would assume you would have to show something to even purchase that from the Exchange, but you don't.
Now, going back to what you said, Jamie, and this obviously question is for both of you. Do you know anybody that has been prosecuted for stolen valor in the form that you referred to, where they are claiming that they have a medal or a ribbon that they do not?
If you mean, do I like personally know somebody like from my career? No, I don't.
But heard of anybody during your time?
I personally do.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's I don't want to say it's necessarily stolen valor. It's stolen misrepresentation. We had a guy show up to our unit, and he had, I guess he was dating a pack clerk or something, and he showed up with his Ranger School certificate, the whole 9 yards, saying he's, jump school, Ranger School, all these certs. So as soon as he showed up, man, he's jumping out of airplanes. He got promoted with all this paperwork. The more schools you do in the military, the more promotion points you get. And kind of sort of like what Jamie said, after talking to this guy for a while, it just didn't jive what he was saying. Like, you sit around talking about Ranger School, certain things. It doesn't matter the class you went to. Back in the day, there used to be a desert phase. But when I graduated, in 1998, I knew, like, you can talk to another Ranger and it just makes sense. And I guess he was talking to some people, and they ended up pulling his records. So when they pulled his records, they found out, all you got to do is call Ranger School and see, no matter if you have the certificate or not, you call these places. I'm pretty sure you can call Buds. You can call the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Training Center at Fort Bragg and figure out if somebody's legit. And some of these phone calls are happening with certain people now, but he ended up getting not just demoted, but prosecuted, because he made money, he made rank and all this stuff. So wow. I guess that is a form of stolen valor, misrepresentation. There wasn't anything with medals there, but he said he got certain awards, the Ranger tab, airborne wings, certain things, the airborne tab, and the stuff that this guy never earned.
Got it. Now, coming at it from, and obviously that's the way that it's kind of viewed, you know, as a civilian, it's just stolen valor in one bucket. I've seen I'm a dude that did stuff, but I'm boasting that I claim that I did other stuff that I never did, and and I think, Paul, I think you and I talked about this because obviously this is our that mutual acquaintance. That one, I was like, you know what? But I like him. Like, like if you got a dude out there claiming who's never been in, claiming to be like, you're just an asshole. This guy didn't need to make any claims because of what other accomplishments he had, and it bummed me out. And at that moment I was working for a different company, and that person was sponsored by us, and he was a spokesperson for us. So it like that one bothered me because I was like, damn it, man, like I didn't want to accept it, right? So I've seen that one. I mean, I've seen the videos out there of the guys that are dressed with a rack of ribbons that are 6 feet long, and they're walking around their local Walmart with Adidas shoes and their BDUs on. Those guys are laughable. But to see somebody out there making claims that they've done stuff that they never did, for me, and this goes back to what you were talking about, Paul, like we've seen a increase in that lately. It's just like, why is that happening? And what leads that person to start going down that road, to just start making lie after lie after lie? Because once you start telling one and you create this false persona, eventually you're going to reach high enough where somebody who's been not paying attention starts to pay attention, and then they pull that bottom piece out and it all comes crumbling down.
So like I can answer that a little bit, and this does not make it right. I'm not making an excuse. But especially when you get into those, as I described them, those two bottom levels of stolen valor, where it does get kind of murky. To me, it definitely is a spectrum. It's not a 1 or a 0. To be perfectly honest, like the guy that claims he was the first one through the door on the Bin Laden raid, but maybe in reality he was the third one. Right. To me, that really doesn't bother me at all. Like I've got nothing on that one. Like there's nothing that doesn't bother me. I'll just say it that way. And but like other people embellish to the point, and like you said, it gets into this sphere where this guy's being offered a book deal, and this guy's being offered a movie deal, and this guy's being offered a sponsorship deal, and this guy's going to be a spokesman for 511 Tactical, and he's going to have a 50-foot tall picture of himself at SHOT Show. And I think with that, guys feel a certain pressure to embellish so that the people that are giving them money feel like they deserve it, and they feel like they deserve it. But like you said, it definitely reaches a tipping point where now you write this book and you claim things that are just like so outrageous that I haven't done a tenth of the things that Paul has done. But like I did enough things in Afghanistan and saw enough things and did enough things that, like, even when I hear and read excerpts of this person's book, I'm like, even from my seat, there's no possible way that's even possible. That he claimed that he did this thing. And where that starts to matter is where I'm going with this is like, if you want me to, I can read it, but like anybody that wants to read it for themselves, it's available. It's public record. Like if you read Clint Romeshay's Medal of Honor citation, what he did was absolutely extraordinarily heroic. And I don't think there's any question in anybody's mind that this guy deserved the Medal of Honor and then some. But if you read his Medal of Honor citation and you put that up next to this book that just came out, I guess that people are talking about, it's like the claims that this person are making are way above and beyond like what Clint Romeshay actually did to earn the Medal of Honor. And so by comparison, what Clint Romeshay, which was extraordinary. What he did seems tame by comparison of these false claims that this other person is making. And then there's people that don't know the difference. Like a person that's a civilian, it was cited in this one case about Joe Rogan. Like Joe Rogan has like spoken up to defend this person because Joe Rogan doesn't know any better. It's like all those people that watched that Making a Murderer documentary on Netflix and started like a letter writing campaign to get the guy out of the prison because they thought he was innocent because they believe everything they saw on TV. Well, Joe Rogan believed everything that this person said, but then when you compare it to what somebody actually did to earn the Medal of Honor, the actual Medal of Honor action seems kind of tame by comparison, and that is why it matters. Like,
okay, so going back to what you said about dude claiming that he was the first one in the door and he's the one that put rounds in bin Laden, and we can talk about that because that situation has been out for a while now. And that, I mean, that's Rob O'Neill, right? I mean, didn't he get book offers and stuff like that? I mean, isn't that the whole basis of what he wrote about? Because he said that he was the number one dude.
Yeah, and I read his book, but way before there was ever any controversy about it. And like his book is pretty all encompassing. It's a biography of his career that kind of centers around that one mission. You referenced this at the top, like he's a guy that actually did do a lot of really provable, like badass stuff. Of anybody that doesn't need to embellish, I would say that he doesn't need to embellish. And just, I guess, to be completely fair, I don't think that it has been proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that he is embellishing. But I do think there is some credible evidence to the fact that he wasn't the number one guy through the door, but he says he was. And to me, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't really have too big of an issue with that, unless the guy that was the number one guy wants to come out, or maybe he never will. But I don't know.
Well, Paul, where do you see that? Like, dude, O'Neill's claiming he was the first guy in. He's the one that shot bin Laden. I mean, is that a form of stolen valor, in your opinion?
Honestly, cut and dry. Yes, I feel it is, only because the only reason why he's coming out and doing this is for fame and notoriety, for money, to put himself on his pedestal way above his peers. And to me, that's kind of downgrading to his peers. That's you got all these guys on that SEAL team. And I saw something the other day where they compared. It's like if you had like 4 dudes that you had to choose from to go into a firefight with, out of these 4 dudes, who would you want to go into that firefight with? And they said Rob O'Neill, because he's a legit badass. He's an operator. They did great things. He didn't have to do this. He didn't have to go out there and say this. And most, quote unquote, and you hate to say these words. Well, actually, I don't hate to say these words. We live in a profession where you're supposed to be a quiet professional. And whether you're a SEAL, a Green Beret, a Ranger, Delta, I got it. As an instructor, I kind of have to tell stories to put my name out there. You got to talk about things you do because it brings upon credit, to your, and that's how you make you're going to make a living, once you retire. But, to go out there and put words on paper. And I'm going to go back to that friend that you and I had, Chris, and I'm not giving him a break. You mentioned, how do you get to this point? I think for some people, it's just a snowball effect. And for him, there's lies snowballed. And the biggest credit that I give him was before the information came out, he talked to both of us. And this was before you and I even, he apologized. There are certain people that are coming out and the truth is out there and all they do is continue to embellish. And the person that's the high profile guy now, it's like, dude, just come out that you wrote this book for entertainment purposes and apologize. And I bet you this all would be over, but he's sticking to his guns and
saying things are like, to make it worse.
Yeah.
And saying things that are not just make it worse, but I can verify the fact that, you come out and say that you failed a course on purpose. Your sergeant major told you to fail that course on purpose. Guess what, buddy? That slot wasn't for you. That's the company slot. It takes 15 minutes to give that slot to somebody else. When I went through Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, that slot that belonged to a teammate of mine. He was in a car accident, couldn't go to the school. I got the slot. I went to the school. And that's like some of this stuff just doesn't make sense what he's saying, and it's snowballing with him, and it's getting worse and worse and worse.
And saying that, or alluding that the absence of a Purple Heart is a paperwork error, that he's going to fix it later. Like, it doesn't work that way, bro. Like,
so, and that's what I mean. Obviously, there's a lot of I guess just duetting with his rebuttal video on YouTube, where his video is playing and then somebody is kind of on this split screen with him, and he's like, okay, here, like, he was like, I don't know, some of this seems a little bit weird, like, what are your thoughts? And listen, like you said, I think before we hit record today, this is a hot topic, and I'll just be clear, I'm not doing this video for extra clicks or extra views or anything. Paul, you and I talked about doing this video prior to, I think, all of this coming out. I believe so. And I don't know. And I think it may have been off of somebody. Well, no, it wasn't off of something stolen valor, but we were talking about, I guess, people with a platform being discredited. And before we went live today on this, or we started recording, we were talking about it, and we're like, oh, it's a big deal. And Jamie, you said, well, it's a big deal this week. Last week it was all about Garantham and his indiscretions. And will that individual, will his brand take a hit from what came out recently about him? And will this other person that's in the news right now take a hit about what's coming out about him? And listen, we don't have to not say his name or not. This isn't about him. This show's not about him. His current situation is just one more in a long line of these situations, and it will continue. I mean, this isn't going to be the last time we see somebody who did X say that they went and did much more. And I think we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah. But that's, as we record this, it was last week or the week before, the hot topic on social media was Garantham and what he did or didn't do in his personal life. And now it's literally been 2 weeks, and I think everybody's over it already. And this is not because I think it's right, and it's not because I don't believe this is excusable, and I don't believe people that do this should get a pass. But I think, just because I'm cynical, I think ultimately this is going to be a little dent in this guy's brand. But I think in a couple of weeks, everybody's going to move on to something else, and nobody's going to care anymore. And so I don't think this is going to like torpedo this dude. And I mean, we just saw Tim Walz. We had 6 months of Tim Walz running for the vice presidency that got caught, like Paul said, telling lies that were provable. And that's the thing that always boggles my mind, when people lie about something that is absolutely provable. I can call rescue swimmer school and find out if you were the honor graduate of the rescue swimmer class you say you were in. Like, that's a provable thing. And, Tim Walz saying that he was in combat and he wasn't, and Tim Walz saying that he was a sergeant major and he wasn't. Like, these are all provable things. But guess what? Now the election's over. Now nobody cares anymore. And so now Tim Walz is going to go back to whatever he was doing before. And now nobody's going to care anymore. And that's not right. He shouldn't get a pass. His stolen valor claims should run their full course all the way down, just like this person who just wrote a book that's obviously full of falsehoods, that should run its full course all the way down. But I just don't think it will.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and disagree again, because that's what we're all about, debating and disagreeing. And I do agree with a lot of what Jamie says, but it's funny I get up every morning before, when I wake up, and before I go to bed, get on social media, try to limit it as much as possible, but it's hard to ignore. But I'll go to, I'm on several Facebook pages, and it's funny because looking at the Facebook page that you're on, or the group, that's kind of what determines what I know and what I see. And I go to all the Ranger Facebook pages, and it's crickets. Everybody's like, hey, you see what's happening with this individual? And a lot of people's like, yeah, it doesn't affect me. Don't care. But on the Special Forces Facebook pages, this is what everybody's talking about, to the point where there are people there that's talking about, like, revoking a long tab and conduct unbecoming and all this stuff and all this lies. So I don't think in certain channels this might, and I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but I'm seeing a lot of things posted on people that are, whether or not they're still in or they're out, and they hold certain legitimate positions and have pull. It's funny because, like you said, all you got to do is make a call to sniper school or ranger school or SODIC, Cephalic, all these schools, and you can find out all this information. And there is a conduct unbecoming there, and getting your long tab revoked is a pretty big deal. But when somebody's just blatantly lying, now anytime you're in a unit, when you're in the U.S. Army, you represent the U.S. Army, right? Everything you do, and it's to some people it's a pretty big deal.
So I got a question though, something that to me, even as a person that's still in active duty, I'm not even really clear about this. I thought Tim Kennedy was out of the military, and you're talking about people throwing around the possibility of charging him with conduct unbecoming and this and that and the other. Is he and in his little rebuttal video, obviously, spoiler alert, we're talking about Tim Kennedy. Is he still in the military? Because
there it is, folks.
He's in.
So he's in the Guard.
Man, we went for 46 minutes. That's
46 minutes.
Well, because in his rebuttal video, he talks about like when the day comes when I hang it up. I thought he was already out. Is he not?
No, he's in SF National Guard. I don't know if it's 19th group or 20th group. I'm pretty sure it's 19th group.
So,
but he is an E8 in SF National Guard. So
he's going to get the same retirement check as me.
Now, well, I don't think he is. Because most of his service, like, how you got to do so many years in reserves or National Guard to earn your retirement. You got 27 years of active duty. I've got 21 years of active duty. I forget how many years you got to do as in the Guard or reserves to earn your retirement. And I think that's why he's still in.
Okay, but
whoever we're talking about.
Right. If he is still in, then that is a whole different kettle of fish, as my British friends would say. Like if you are still in, then this stuff is actionable and is prosecutable. Like one of my
before you finish that, because I want you to follow it up with, but who takes the action? So obviously these claims are out there now. They're in the internet. Who does it?
His chain of command.
Okay, go ahead.
It would like his chain of command, whoever that is in the National Guard or Reserves or whatever he is still in. Like Paul said, if they're talking about revoking his tab, they're talking about charging him with conduct unbecoming, that would be his chain of command in his unit. But what I was about to say was a funny story. When I was at the SEAL team, I heard a SEAL Master Chief tell one of the young guys that was a brand new SEAL, when you go to the bar, you can tell the fat chicks at the bar anything you want, but don't come here and lie to us. And like that's where this person has like really, like, not only has he crossed the line, he has like sprinted a mile past where the line was. And if he is still in that, then he has really put himself in. Like if he was out, then this really does become a different story. And again, I guess in my defense a little bit, I didn't know he was still in. Yeah, I thought he was out. But.
So I guess that's where this may not just be the flavor of the week, and especially Paul, if you're hearing things out there that are obviously a little bit different. Like we said at the beginning of the show, this wasn't really about him and what has come to light. You got and I said in the beginning of the show, we're coming at it from the spectrum of two dudes that are military and one dude that's not. I know Tim, and I think I told you, Jamie, when we last recorded, because at that time you hadn't really seen much of this and you're like, man, I don't know, and then you obviously you read everything and you saw everything and you're like, whoa, okay. And I was like, listen, hey, Tim, if you're watching this at the end or listening to this, and because it's got your name and maybe it starts trending, my thing with Tim is he's a buffoon based on just the way that he acts with companies that he's working with. I sat there and I met with him and had lunch with him and his business manager years ago And I told him we were a small company, and he loved the product, but apparently he only loved the product if it came with a check to do a video about it. And it's like, I mean, it's just, to me, it's just kind of cheesy. And where I saw a rebuttal video to his rebuttal was in his video. He's talking about how these guys, the Anti-Hero podcast, called him out because he has a big following. And then they talked about their sponsors and they made more money. It's like, dude, you literally make money off of every product that you sit there and tell people is the greatest thing, like your pillow that you just talked about online. Like that's exactly what you do. Like, and you're now upset because guys are coming after you and your name made them more money. Sorry, but that's the world we live in. So me coming at it, or me looking at it, I was just like, I didn't see anything. And Paul, you're the one that kind of brought it to light. I saw a bunch of people making claims, and I saw the clip from the Anti-Hero podcast, but much like some of the people that have commented, oh, it's just another Tim Kennedy thing, scroll, because I don't want to see it. I just, and even like he was saying, like, there's a lot of people that are like, I just don't care. It's Tim, like, they're just like, oh God, it's him again, whatever. They just move past it. But then when you start peeling back the layers, you're like, oh, wow, this is a lot deeper. And it wasn't until you kind of were like, because this hits close to you. You were a Green Beret. Like,
yeah, it's kind of funny. It's, pretty much, I lived down in North Carolina for many, many years. And I knew Tim, we bounced together, and saying that we bounced at the same place together, I was low guy on the totem pole, right. And he was head bouncer, as he should be. And I'll tell you straight up, man, anytime we got in a bar fight, we would just stand back and we would be in awe, because I'm not even exaggerating. He would just he was Tim Kennedy. And right. I mentioned this to you, to even be in the UFC. There are so many different fight leagues out there. So even to get asked to be in the UFC, you have to know what you're doing. So to me, being a Green Beret, being a Ranger school, sniper school, who cares if you failed or not? Who cares if you were honor grad or not? If you're a Green Beret and you're an MMA fighter, dude, you are a freaking American badass. You're legit, and you don't need to embellish anything, but to go out there and say all this stuff and do all this stuff, you're just taking away from the dudes that actually earn these Valor awards. Seventh group, before he went in the National Guard, he was in 7th group. And the funny thing is, the 7th group wouldn't let him fight professionally. So he decided to get out and go SF National Guard, so he could continue his SF career. Kudos to him. Keep going to schools, keep deploying, and go fight. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But whenever I lived in North Carolina, I mean, I worked in the same places. We had the same friends. I got people, we went through the Q course almost at the same time. So we were both, he was in the 7th group SIF, spent time there. I spent time in the 3rd group SIF. So all the schools and everything that he talks about, every time there's something that brought up, like, I can tell you if that stuff is true or not, just because I've been there, I did it. And I'm not saying that our careers mimic each other, but it's like, dude, isn't that enough to do that without you writing? And I've had friends that's like, dude, you've deployed enough and you've seen enough stuff, you should write a book. Like, first of all, I think that goes against being a silent professional, not putting all that information out there. And as much as both you guys know, when I teach, there are stories that I talk about in my classes that I really don't want to be in a book, because we all go through mental health, and we all, issues, and we all deal with that just like I'm pretty sure Tim deals with, hence the name Scars and Stripes. There's stuff we have to deal with. But for a dude that left he kept of every day, and says, yeah, it was in the journal, and then to go out and write this book with such outlandish stories and events that the only people that can back up are people that are no longer with us, which is crazy. I'm not saying that, but it's like, dude, you shot a sniper rifle that isn't even issued by anybody.
That's
it's like, come on, dude. It's like some of this stuff, but
Well, it seems we have lost Paul for a second here, so we're gonna just go ahead and wait for him to reconnect. But and we're hoping that he does reconnect and he didn't just lose internet based on the wind that we were referring to before. We're gonna switch the look here until he comes back in, and hopefully he will come back in. Hold on, here he is. Paul is back.
Yeah.
All right.
Dude, the wind just cracked here, and I'm pretty sure I lost internet for a second.
Yep, you sure did. Oh, look at this. We've got a better look
screen.
here. I like this screen. Your head's bigger. Paul's complained about that. So all right, you were referring to the rifle that he shot. And it's funny because and again, I don't know if maybe one of the things in his rebuttal is I think he blamed some of this on book editing.
Well, but there's clips of him in several podcasts like saying the same thing. So
okay.
I haven't heard him say that either. I heard like there's a clip of him on a podcast where he's asked about like, how did you have this weapon and ammunition that nobody else had, and he gives like a Kamala Harris non-answer to it.
Okay. Yeah, and I think this first the way this thing started is, when in the book he kind of throws one of his team leaders under the bus. And it kind of got back to that team leader, and he had to apologize. And I guess he apologized on a podcast, or it was a video apology. And what I was going to say before this, we got that mutual friend that called us, and he basically went to our entire group of friends and he apologized. I think if Tim came out and apologized and came out and said, hey, man, I'm trying to sell books, and I kind of exaggerate a little bit. If he came clean, I think just like Jamie said, this would be a non-story in a couple weeks. I don't think Tim's that guy. No. I think he's the dude that when he shows up to an MMA fight, it's, Green Beret Army Ranger. Well, Tim, you wasn't an Army Ranger. You're Ranger qualified. Going to Ranger school doesn't make you a Ranger. And a lot of people think that's a big deal, but to Rangers, it is a big deal.
Right.
And just like, just like everything else, to go out there and misrepresent yourself, I think that's what everybody's having and to continue on it. And the whole grenade thing. Well, I talked to you about throwing grenades overseas.
Oh yeah. And I mean, Jamie talked about it too yesterday. So you guys can talk grenade throwing, in length. But I'm sure there's going to be a little bit more that comes out. I don't know that we'll hear much more from him because he's made his 11-minute video in answer to the podcasts that are coming out there. But I mean, that 11-minute video is now being challenged just the same. So, I don't know. He's going to have to figure out what his best course is. I'd be curious to see what the fallout is from the companies that are attached to him. One of those companies, which is notorious for foot and mouth disease, is Black Rifle Coffee Company. They have their own drama over the last however many years with the firearms industry and the people obviously that have I would say that the content creators, the people out there on the media side of things continue to call out about that company. But I'm curious to see what happens there. I mean, I don't know Evan Hafer's story. I know that he was in, but the other big name attached to that company is Matt Best, who obviously has some he has a platform that is pretty large as well.
Yeah, keying off something Jamie said earlier too, and I do agree with him on this. Whether this is 2 weeks or not, one of the things that we didn't bring up, and it kind of verifies what Jamie is saying, is Tim was in the, there was that big issue with Tim a couple of years ago when he came out and said 19-year-olds shouldn't carry ARs and they shouldn't have them. And guess what? That blew over. So the likelihood of he has such a fan base that is, all over him, that they just don't care. And I understand that because great American, he did great things, but there are people I think the problem is there's people in our groups, there's people in SF that, and everybody's like, well, why is this coming out now? Well, guess what? I don't think anybody really read the book. Nobody cared. And then certain people read the book and kind of it's like, hey man, what's up with him kind of saying he's going to kick his team leader's butt and talking all the smack. This, as a junior guy that's not even on that ODA, for you to go up to an officer that's in charge of an ODA and sit there and threaten them, I guarantee you one thing, and I will say this every time. If that ODA was there, I don't care if it was Tim Kennedy or not, they would have got together. It might have taken the whole ODA. They would have beat the crap out of him. You don't talk to my captain that way. He might be a piece of crap, but he's my piece of crap.
Right.
And
so is that the guy that so the story I heard, that's the one that I believe made him fly out and do an apology on air,
which
that's from what I understand.
Same, but has anybody seen that yet? I heard it was going to be released on quote unquote on a podcast, but I haven't.
Right,
and that's sure if it was out, we would have heard about it. But.
Now the person's name that keeps being thrown around is Travis. I know one very famous Travis in this industry that I don't know if is that the same. That's not the same Travis, is it? No. Okay. So I don't know. So I that's the podcast that I would have checked. So I don't know where to go to see if it's been out there. But apparently the anti-heroes, the anti-hero podcast was going to have that person on, but once he got the apology, he kind of just said, I'm done, I'm out, I got what I wanted, and that's it. Going back to our mutual friend Paul with this, is he made his apology, the news came out, and he rode off into the sunset, so to speak, and has just lived a quiet life and done something else. That is not, I don't believe that is ingrained in Tim's DNA. He can't do that. And if he did, like what he's too deep in this now. What is he going to do? Go, work for IBM? Go, be a general contractor for a construction company? He's got such a big platform where the guy that we keep referring to, I mean, he didn't have a large platform like that. I mean, he was known, and but even Jamie, when I asked you his name, you didn't know who it was, and I just don't think that that's going to happen with this situation. There's going to be no.
Well, I think just the fact that his rebuttal was, he said, and he doesn't plan on going away. He's like, hey man, I'm sticking to my guns here. And I got all these teammates behind me, and I've got all my support, and you know what? It's not that big of a deal. And he's going to continue to do what he does. And yeah, so, yeah, but I think it's going to take a lot of people, because the Anti-Hero podcast isn't the only podcast. I mean, you can do a search on YouTube right now, and I want to say there's probably about a dozen Green Berets that have podcasts, and this is the talk of the town. And I didn't initially want to do this just to talk about Tim.
No.
And to me, it's this is a prime example on why you should, vet instructors. Be very, very careful of the people that you surround yourself. And it's really hard to see a Tim Kennedy that's got all this stuff, but man, it's all about, checks and balances and taking care of our own. And part of taking care of our own is we have his responsibility, in our regiment, to make sure, because and he brought up a really good point. The one individual on the and I'm really bad with names, but he's like, dude, there are young guys out there wanting to join the military and want to be Green Berets, and they're reading this book and they think this is the standard. To get out of a vehicle in the middle of an ambush and start throwing grenades is not the standard. This is not. No. You're gonna get these kids killed because they think, oh, to be a hero, I need to do all this stuff, and it's just not true. This is not the norm to go out there, and all these outlandish stories this is the problem that a lot of the guys are having, is you got these generations of guys that are out there looking up to us, and we have a responsibility, as not just soldiers, sailors, Marines, and so on, but as responsible adults and mentors to make sure that we're squaring these people away. And every time he teaches a class for sheepdog response, and you know this, Chris, I taught one of those classes.
Yeah.
I taught a class. I was lead firearms instructor. And some of this stuff that just comes out, you're just like, dude, as instructors, I'm not trying to teach somebody or tell somebody something that is inevitable, that's going to get them killed. We're trying to keep people alive here.
Yeah, I agree. And just to go back to your vetting instructors, I've worked in, like I said, in the firearms industry prior to what I'm doing now. And I would be contacted by people claiming, hey, do you guys offer a discount to veterans? And, in order to, I guess, protect stolen valor, we would ask for a copy of their ID. Sure, just send me a copy of your ID and we'll make sure that we get you squared away. So, it's just, I think that's my way of, I guess, policing it, but I believe it comes down to the community policing their own here. And I do refer to that on the podcast.
Yeah, I guess it's funny. I think Don Shipley has said he's identified more fake Navy SEALs than there ever have been actual Navy SEALs in the history of the United States Navy. So this stuff is out there, and it is important to get your hands around. Like Paul said, when I teach a firearms class, I have to establish my foundation as an instructor, and I've been in the Navy for 27 years. I have a pretty impressive rack of ribbons, none of which are Valor awards. When I was in Afghanistan, I volunteered for every single mission that went outside the wire. Every single time we had an op outside the wire, I volunteered for it. And depending on how you look at it, I either had the good luck or the bad luck, where just like nothing much ever really happened. I've been through, like, my foundation as an instructor is that I've been through like extremely high levels of training. Like, one of the most validating things I ever did was when Paul and I did the little team tactics demo, and he with no rehearsal and no prior discussion, he and we jumped right in. And even though I think you were primarily an East Coast guy and my whole career has been spent in the West Coast, you're Army and Marine background, I'm Navy background, but you and I jumped right in and flowed like pretty seamlessly. So I've had tons of training, and I just had, like I said, either the good luck or the bad luck that like nothing ever really happened. I never got myself into a Black Hawk Down type situation. I always make the point that a guy could have joined the Navy in 1980. He could have done a full 20-year career as a Navy SEAL and retired as a SEAL Master Chief in the year 2000. And like nothing really happened during that 20-year period. Does that make what that guy did less? Does that mean what he did didn't count? No. You have every right to say, I was a sniper, I was a breacher, I was a SEAL, I was this, I was that, but I was in during a time when nothing ever happened and I never really got to do anything. I think in the past, people that were recognized as heroes, like Audie Murphy, he did another extraordinarily heroic action, and I think he was only like 16 or 17 when he did it. And he did a great service to this country, and the thanks that the country gave him was, after the war, they made him a famous Hollywood star and let him star in movies, and because he was Audie Murphy. And now, I think because of social media and people writing books and all that stuff, like we've talked about, I think it does create a pressure to embellish. But all those things being said, like, I don't have the right to claim that I've done things I haven't done. Those guys that just happened to be a Navy SEAL between 1980 and 2000 and just had the bad luck of never getting to do anything, it doesn't give you the right, because like Paul said, like, all of these things dilute the actions of the people who did these things for real. And like the example I gave earlier, if you read Clint Romaché's Medal of Honor citation and all he got was 1 Medal of Honor, and then you read this guy's book, if what he says in the book is true, then he deserves 10 Medals of Honor. And right. it dilutes the real guys that have done the real stuff. And like I said, I'm proud of my career, and I've done a lot of cool stuff. And my job that I have right now, there's only 11 people in the entire United States Navy that can do what I'm doing right now. But that doesn't give me the right to embellish and try to make more out of it than what it is. So So this is important. And again, Paul, in my defense, where I said I didn't think this person was going to have any serious consequences, that statement was based on the fact that I didn't think he was still in the military. But if he is, then yeah, he might actually be in some trouble. But that's all I got.
I'll let that slide. Hey, just for the record, I was a West Coast Marine, so that I know the surfer lingo for all you West Coast guys. So I think that was how we were able to kind of, jive and work well together. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It was kind of cool. We didn't do any rehearsals, out there in Oklahoma for this event, and it all falls back on if you do this job. There's not a lot of differences between organizations and between units. So if you've done time as in a support role with the SEALs, you know how to do stuff. And I've always said it, if it wasn't for the fact that we have support roles overseas as support positions, we couldn't do the stuff that we were over there doing. We need the cooks and we need the mechanics, and most of our mechanics were drivers. And when we got ambushed, they were in the gunfights. And it's one of those things where, man, it's when it all comes down to it, it doesn't matter what you do. We're all the members of a team, and as long as you're an asset to this society and not a liability, you are an asset that we need. And everybody wants to be cooler than they are, and this and that. It's like, dude, we need the cooks, we need the mechanics, we need to get paid. And dude, man, just do the best things, do that job the best you can do. And I know plenty of competitive shooters out there that are civilians, plenty of competitive shooters out there that were quote unquote regular guys in the military, and they're still some of the best shooters in the world. And you don't have to be a darn Green Beret or an Army Ranger or SEAL to be a great instructor. But you do have to freaking be honest to yourself and be honest to your students, and all that stuff.
And like I've always said, I do think a certain percentage of society, especially now, we're just on the back end of being at war for, I don't know, what was it, 23 straight years or something like that. And there's a lot of guys that could have gotten into it and that chose not to. And now that it's over, they feel a certain way about it. And so, like, my advice as of late is, if you have a son, tell him to join the Marines for 4 years. If he doesn't like it, get out. But at least for the rest of his life, he can say, I was in the Marines, and then he'll never feel that pressure to have to lie about it later. But
yeah. All right.
He won't say I was a Marine. He will say for the rest of his life, I am a Marine.
Okay.
Because no matter what I did in the Army, I will always be a Marine. And that's something that, like you said, man, there should be a pride in just being a Marine. It's great if you want to be Force Recon or MARSOC, but and that's the cool thing about the Marine is they teach that esprit de corps and that pride. And man, no matter what you do, have pride in it as long as you do it the best you can. But I guess some people out there just need to put more in a book.
Right. And I think, and that's, as we wrap up, and like I said, folks, we've gone longer today than we normally like to go. We like to keep this to an hour just to respect everyone's time, their drive to work.
There's three of us.
But there is three of us. And the Anti-Hero podcast about this thing was 3 hours long. I do not know how people do podcasts for that long. But it is what it is. What I want to kind of put out there is, it was repeated numerous times in that show, and we talked about it a little bit here today. I'm a guy who has not served, and I'm honored to have a couple of dudes like you that I call my friends and to do podcasts like this with. And you guys are never just giving me your resume all the time with what you've done. You've done some cool shit, and I get to hear about it, and that's awesome. I've got another buddy of mine who, Paul, you've had the opportunity to sit down and talk with, do a podcast with, and he's done some badass shit. And when you got a guy like Kyle Lamb, who's retired Sergeant Major, Delta, and you hear some of those stories, but he's quiet about it, right? Like, he's not out there writing books like this. He's written books, but he's not out there going all ham. You respect those people for what they've done, and like you said, the person that we talked about today didn't need to go further than what they've already accomplished. The person that we the person that we referred to a couple of times, he didn't need to embellish what he did in order to gain some kind of notoriety. And I hope that in the future, because we have guys that are going to be always getting out and they're always going to want to get involved with this. I hope that if they learn any lesson from what's just happened, is that they do not need to embellish what they've done, because probably what they've done is better than what a lot of, is more accomplishing than what other people have done. Right. Like, again, I never served. So Jamie, 20 years or 29 years in doing what you've been doing, and however many years you've been flying these, like, that's the coolest shit in the world. Like, Paul, understanding what you've done, again, I mean, it's enough. So
real quick, as a final point, Paul, you were in for 21 years. Is that right? And you retired? Do you wish you had done more in your time in?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. That's the point. And out of all the stuff I've done, I'm going to retire at 29 years of service, and I still wish I had done more. So, like, I get it that there's people out there that wish they had done more, but you don't have the right to fabricate it.
Right. But unfortunately, I do not think that this is the end of this topic. I believe that we'll see more. I just hope that enough people start to pay attention and they realize that they don't have to. But anyway, folks, thank you so much for spending some time with us today to listen to this podcast. If you want to learn more about what we kind of pulled the curtain back on the last 30 minutes of this show, then you can find some podcasts out there on YouTube or some videos out there on YouTube to get the full story. We didn't go into the full story. That was not the intention of this show. The intention of this show was to kind of just put a spotlight on the uptick in stolen valor and why it's just not freaking cool. So don't do it. But until next time, you guys stay safe. Jamie, Paul, final words.
It's easy to be hard to be smart.
Yeah, I got a little bit more on this, and I just want to bring up Kyle Lamb real quick. I was lucky enough to participate and take or go to one of his little seminars called Leadership in the Shadows. And the cool thing about Kyle is he's not up there talking about him. He's up there talking about his teammates. And it's not about, this is what I did, this is what they did, and they taught me this. Man, we all learned this stuff from somewhere. I can't take credit for anything that I've done. It's all based on the great leadership that I had in the military, the great leadership, my firearms instructors, my coaches in Las Vegas, is what the classes that I've taken from certain instructors are just phenomenal. And it's one of those things where, our actions speak louder than our words. I know Jamie's just like this, man. We can say we do all this stuff and this is my background. But when I go out and teach, man, I shoot. I show it's not just, these are the words coming out of my mouth and these are the drills that I do. I show you that I can do these drills and I can do all this stuff. And I take pride in that. There's so many instructors and there's so many people out there that's just me. And this is the stuff that I've done. It's like, dude, when you're vetting people out there, it's really easy. And like Jamie said earlier, being a veteran, as soon as I talk to somebody that says, hey, I've done this and I've done that, it's pretty easy to call those people out. And it's not to call those people out, but the people that have actually done the stuff, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, got the ribbons, got the medals, got the Valor awards. It's those people that deserve it. The people that actually are the heroes out there that put their money where their mouth is.
Yes, it is. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate the time. And until next time, ZP002 out.
XPO311 Delta out.
X739 Delta out.
Later.